I was saying, y'all, it's your boy Rico from RicoScores, and man, of course, we got to talk about everything that just happened. Sorry, I was coming out with this video so late. Ended up busy, and then also just I had to take a break. I was like, you know what, man? Let me cheer up by watching some of my Georgia Bulldogs from yesterday. I was like, hey, man, I got to take a break, man. And I'm going to come back. We got to talk about everything. Because you know, Rico of RicoScores, this video is probably going to end up going for forever. Probably going to end up being over an hour long because we have so much to talk about. And you already know how I structure these reviews. We got to talk about every position group and every coach that had a serious impact on this game. So we got to talk about Rivera, Bieniemy, the positives and negatives. Offense was way better, but it wasn't perfect. We got to talk about the positives and negatives for Eric Bieniemy. We got to talk about Jack Del Rio, and then of course every position group, so quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, offensive line, defensive line, linebacker, cornerback, safety. We got to talk about everything, man. It's a lot that we have to talk about. You see the title. Is it time to rebuild? Man, we got to talk about the Philadelphia Refereagles. Man, shouts out my boy ARW1 for that one. The Refereagles. First of all, also Howell had his best game. We definitely got to talk about that. Jamison Crowder, was he our best free agency signing? We got to talk about that. Eric Bieniemy's bounce back game. Did the offensive line changes fix the offense? Was us going from Nick Gates and Sadiq Charles to Tyler Larson and Chris Paul all that we needed to change for us to finally be able to score more than 20 points in a game? Least sacks given up all season. We were good until the very last one at the end of the game, the strip sack that basically lost us the game. Other than that, between the offensive line, Eric Bieniemy calling different plays and somehow getting the ball out of his hands quicker, only one sack given up. Also, do we blame Terry McLaurin for those clutch drops, or is it Sam Howell's fault, or is it both? Also, speaking of drops, Jahan Dropson just elevated back to Jahan Dotson. He had a bounce back game, technically like the best game he's had of his career. So shouts out to him for that. We got to talk about that, the positives and one slight negative from the game he had. Brian Robinson is obviously our best pass protector compared to Antonio Gibson out of the running back room. We got to talk about that. Also, Brian Robinson had a really good game in the run, and Antonio Gibson had a pretty good game in the passing game as well. But pass protection wise, Brian Robinson is our best running back pass protector outside of Alex Armah. Of course, he's a fullback / tight end. That's not fair. He blocks more than he does anything else. Also, is the Washington defensive line underperforming, or is it just our secondary so bad that our defensive line doesn't have time to get there? Also, is David Mayo our biggest weakness, not only just on the defense but on the entire team? Also, Emmanuel Forbes got cooked by AJ Brown. Is this 2023 draft class completely useless? Is it safe to say that already? And then of course the script makers are undefeated, man. And should we be sellers at the trade deadline? Should we just go ahead and trade away all of the veterans and build for the future with a new coaching staff, new front office, all of that? Also, shouts out to Joey Slye, man. He should probably have NFC Special Teams Player of the Week on lock after making a 61-yarder, after making the 56-yarder before the false start, and he made every PAT. Anytime he was asked to come out there and kick, he made it no matter how far the distance. So again, that's just a general synopsis of a lot of the major points we're going to talk about, but we're going to talk about a lot of stuff, and most notably, different from other review videos. At the end of this video, we're going to do a nice little deep dive into whether or not it's just time to go ahead and rebuild. Let's embrace the tank. Let's embrace the rebuild. Get rid of the front office. Get rid of the coaching staff. Go ahead and trade away some of the veterans that don't want to be a part of a rebuild. Is it time to just go ahead and build around Sam Howell and acquire as many picks we can before this trade deadline, which is on Tuesday, Halloween, and let's get to work type of thing? Is it time? Are we pulling the plug on this season? Are we giving up on the playoffs? Because I don't want to end up 7-9, 7-10, 6-11, or 8-9 or something like that. It's like, hey man, it's either we're diving head first and trying to make the playoffs, or it's time to not win another game this season. Point blank, period. This perpetual middle that we've been on, I tried to warn y'all for years now that perpetual middle is the worst case scenario. You're never good enough to take that next step, and you're never going to be bad enough to get elite playmaking players. And look at where we are now. Still average. Still, I mean, if anything, you just go from being average to slightly worse, slightly worse, slightly worse. Maybe it gets slightly better at one point in time, but typically you just end up getting worse and worse and worse, and it takes so long to end up ever getting bad enough to get a true playmaker. So is it time to just fully embrace the tank now, rather than consistently being average for another 8 years, just for us to end up basically in the same place we are now? But Before we dive into all of that, sorry for the long intro. Make sure you stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, and stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get a notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. If you want to support the channel, make sure you donate to the $RicoScores Cash App for all of the work and time, all of that type of stuff, because YouTube is tripping right now, so I really appreciate any support that y'all can give. Of course, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, all of that type of stuff, and stay tuned because I'm coming with a lot of different stats and everything from this game. I already did a mock draft last week. I'm gonna do a lot of team building stuff, especially if we start trading people before Tuesday, like trade Montez Sweat, Chase Young, or any other veterans or something like that. I'm your source for this rebuild. I got you. What players we need to draft, or we need to look towards free agency and stuff like that. How we can completely turn this around. We can start looking at head coaching candidates or offensive coordinating candidates if we want Eric Bieniemy to be our head coach. All of that type of stuff. So stay tuned, and I'll come with a lot more mock drafts and things like that as well. But that just depends on what we look like by the time Tuesday comes around. But before we dive, let's go ahead and get to everything. Without further ado, man, let's get it.
You tell your family you're gonna be a commander.
Again, shouts out my boy ARW1. You see him in my chat all of the time. He was the first person I saw to say the Philadelphia Refereagles, man. Because, hey, man, shouts out to the refs. GG's, man. Y'all had a hell of a game, man. Y'all went stupid today. Y'all put on for them Eagles, man. Commanders versus the Eagles and refs. Hey, man, the refs may be MVP. I'm not gonna lie, boy. The refs did they thing today for the Eagles, man. GG's. We can't compete with y'all, man. As a Commanders fan, as a Commanders team, we ain't got nothing on y'all, man. Y'all was booted up out there today, man. Y'all went stupid. Shouts out to the refs, man. I mean, it's just crazy what the referees did to us today, man. I ain't gonna lie, man. They killed us. But before we even get to the referee stuff, shouts out my boy Tan Top Podcast for some overall themes and notes from this game. He said the no challenge on a clear 4th and 4 incompletion killed us. The interception after illegal man down the field killed us. The back-to-back drops by McLaurin killed us. Just straight killed us. Those are the overall stories of the game from him. Shouts out to Grant Paulson because he brings up some more great points for the overall theme of why we lost this game. Losing to a 7-1 team isn't the problem. It's how that burns you up. Game altering drop, not challenged. Wasting second half timeouts while trailing. How is Brown still torching Forbes one-on-one? Why are we even still messing around with that? Lack of pass rush by a revered D-line that's supposed to be carrying this team. And last week, allowed 14 L. Today, scored 31 L. It's just always something wrong. I keep using this analogy, but it's like a boat with holes in it. Every time we patch up these holes, the holes that already have duct tape on them end up breaking loose. And now we're starting to sink because of that. Then we go over there and fix those. And then now these are starting to fly open. And now we're getting new holes we've never had before. I mean, the last time we played the Eagles, who had it on their bingo card that Tressway would probably have his worst punting day of all time, of his entire career? Not of all time, of all punters, but for out of his career, Tressway to have his worst game I've ever seen him probably have that I can remember. I mean, it's just always something. I mean, today, Jahan Dotson finally figured it out. Offensive line played well enough. Sam Howell hooped. Eric Bieniemy hooped. The defense up to the 4th quarter allowed only 17 points to one of the more dominant teams in the NFL. And then like everything just broke loose. The levees broke. It just flooded with points after a certain point. But we were in the 4th quarter. The Eagles still only had 17 points, believe it or not. And then you have Terry McLaurin, great game. You know, again, target them early, we score points. Every time Terry McLaurin gets a certain amount of targets, it seems like we score a certain amount of points. I got to do the advanced stats backup look on that because I swear there's a correlation there. But then we fix all of these things, and then Terry McLaurin can't seem to catch anything when we need him the most. Like, it's just crazy. It's always something, man. We finally start running the ball super well with Brian Robinson, super. And then we just stop running the ball with him, even though the game was never out of reach like that. And that's on Eric Bieniemy. It's just always something. something, man. We can never play a complete game. The thing we focus on from the previous L, we like, all right, we got to fix that so that we can win. Hold on, y'all hold it down. The rest of y'all who played well, keep playing well. Let's focus on these things that are not doing well. We fix those things, and then the things we told hold off to keep continuing to play well, something goes wrong. One or multiple things end up just like, you were good last game, what happened this game type of thing. So it's just really annoying that we just can't hold it together. But before we get to Rivera, and we're going to do more can't keep it together talk when we get to Rivera, the refs, dog. First of all, number one, let's get this out the way. The holding on our D-line more plays than not and not getting called was killing me, dog. There were some very obvious holds at times. I remember one vividly where John Ridgway was literally getting clothesline. He put his arms in the air and the ref still didn't call it. The only reason that Jalen Hurts even was able to escape the pocket on that play, and I think it ended up being incomplete anyway, but like, come on, dog. Like, John Ridgway's literally like, bruh, I'm being strangled right now. Help. Wacky inflatable tube man type of he hit him with an emote like, man, look at me, refs. Like, I'm 300 and something pounds waving my arms. You think I'm just doing this for fun? Still not called. So on top of a lot of other just craziness going on, not calling any holdings on our D-line. I refuse to believe that Chase Young had that bad of a game, and he was just not impactful at all. I'm gonna have to go back and look at the all 22, but I'm just gonna give Chase Young the benefit of the doubt when it comes to not having a really productive day, because I mean, I know the Eagles arguably have the best O-line in football, but Chase Young, before this game, the past 2-3 weeks, he's been a top 5 pass rusher when you look at efficiency, advanced stats, and stuff like that. Pass rush, win rate, all of that type of stuff. He's been literally a top 5 edge rusher in the NFL. Like, literally outpacing Myles Garrett and Nick Bosa and pass rush win rate. Like, he's been going crazy this season. I refuse to believe he just had that bad of a game today. And again, when it comes to the D-line, we'll talk about this when we get to Jack Del Rio and we get to the D-line in the secondary. But like I alluded to in the intro before we started to dive into the video, I know the D-line gets a lot of blame because we do expect them to carry this team, but honestly, how are they supposed to get to the quarterback quick enough to do anything anyway? Because if the secondary can't cover anybody for at least 2 seconds, Jalen Hurts snapping the ball, 1, 2, 3 step drops, getting it out, and it's like there's no time for the defensive line to get there. I mean, even if there wasn't a human being in the way, Jalen Hurts is getting the ball out of his hands so fast that even if Chase Young is unblocked, he may not get there in time type of stuff. So it's just like, what can you really do there? I know I kind of went on a tangent, but still, back to the refs holding on the defensive line all day. I'm just going to assume until I look at the all 22. Again, when I do these game reviews the night of the game, I haven't gone back and watched the game just yet. This is all my live reaction. I'm not able to watch every little thing because who can? So when I look at the all 22, I'll get a better feel for, was Chase Young really just that bad, or was that also because of the refs just not giving us any calls and Chase Young's being held all day? I'm not sure. I'm just throwing that out there. Then number 2, and the main part of this, all of the terrible calls. The Logan Thomas 15-yard penalty for absolutely no reason, personal foul completely away from the play, and it wasn't anything personal foul about it, even if it was towards the play. Just absolutely ridiculous. We'll get to that later. But just like the last Eagles game, can we be fair, refs? All I asked for fair. You called catch on the field for the Eagles when Devonta Smith clearly didn't catch it, just like the Eagles game, but didn't do the same thing for us. I mean, literally, we're to the point now where Devonta Smith now has more yards against us that shouldn't count than he actually has earned against us. It's actually really crazy. But it's just crazy that Devonta Smith's catch was called a catch on the field, but Jahan Dotson's wasn't. It's actually crazy too, because we're going to dive into it. Jahan Dotson catch actually was called catch on the field. Somehow they reversed it outside of the 2-minute warning where the booth can just challenge it themselves. It's ridiculous. I don't even know why New York even had any type of control over the situation. It's just ridiculous. But still, just the direct comparisons. Last time we played the Eagles, Devonta Smith wasn't a catch, called a catch on the field. We challenged it, inconclusive evidence. Terry McLaurin overtime should have been a call to catch on the field. If you're just going to give that grace to offenses, then that's what you do. The offense, when in doubt, if it's 50-50, you're not absolutely sure, side with the offense. They didn't do that last game, and they didn't do that this game. I don't know so it's not the offense, it's the Eagles. That's clearly what it is. The ref side with the Eagles, not the offense. That's just how that works, I guess. I mean, the refs, this is one of the worst reffing games I've ever seen. I mean, look at this screenshot right here. Look at this. This is clearly not a catch. What made them, first of all, they didn't have the jurisdiction to even overrule this outside of the 2-minute warning. Again, we'll talk about that soon. But even outside of that, even if this was in a 2-minute warning, even if the Eagles themselves challenge this and risk their own timeout on this catch, look at this, man. Like, what catch? I know, yeah, Rivera, you should have challenged it, yeah, but at the same time, Rivera said in his press conference that they never showed the replay on the Jumbotron, so that feels a little fishy right there in itself. Like, they just never showed the replay. Like, what happened there? But still, at the same time, though, I completely agree with what most of y'all are saying. That even live, while I was live streaming during the game, watching it with y'all, I was like, I don't care if it looks like a perfect catch and you know Devonta Smith caught it, you still got to challenge that with the situation that's going on, with the way that the game is going. Fourth down play, like, you gotta challenge that regardless of whether you knew it was a catch or not, without even conclusive evidence. And then you see the whole sideline going like that was not a catch. Like, they saw it, they were right there. Maybe Ron Rivera wasn't there, but you gotta trust somebody on your sideline. Everybody's doing this, but even if everybody was not doing this, even if everybody was just a sitting still robot, again, with the situation that we were in, with that being a fourth down, a big play, and it eventually leads to a touchdown, you just gotta assume it leads to a touchdown. It's just how the NFL works. It's how the NFL script writing works. After a big no call or a big call, the refs mess something up, or a big fourth down conversion, it almost seems like it's inevitable for a big play to happen soon afterwards. And the Eagles ended up scoring. Again, situational awareness, Ron Rivera. Regardless of how bad the refs are cheating, you have to call that challenge. I don't care what's going on. That's absolutely inexcusable. But also, shouts out my boy Chad Ryan for breaking this down. Just to clarify, the play that we're talking about, with going to Jahan Dotson now, not the Devonta Smith one, the Jahan Dotson one. The play was ruled a catch on the field. Darius Slay got hurt. While he was hurt and laying down and then subsequently leaving the field, without a review, the ruling was changed to incomplete. And this was before the 2-minute warning, so there's no automatic booth reviews. So who was eligible to review this? Who had the jurisdiction, the power, the control to review this situation? That was extremely fishy and completely dirty by the refs right there. Shouts out my boy Tan Top Podcast for this as well. It was called a completion on the field, and there was no challenge or automatic review because it was outside of the 2-minute warning, right? So why does New York have the authority to overrule a call on the field when there's no reason for a review at all? It was literally called incomplete on the field. Darius Slay gets hurt. Was that just part of the plan? Did the Eagles tell him to act hurt so that they could take the time to review this while nobody was looking? Like, what is going on? I mean, look at this right here. You can't tell me that this is not what the refs were doing with the Eagles, man. Look, after the game, how the refs talked to Roger Goodell, even if it wasn't in person, maybe on a FaceTime call, and then I turned the mic off and I could call whatever I wanted. That's another thing that was extremely fishy. Why were the mics never working? We never knew what was going on. We didn't hear any discourse after like the second quarter, and they were able to basically just call whatever they wanted. We just turned the mics off, and now what? What you gonna do, Commanders? Sue us? You lost. You took the L already. Would you just move on, type of thing? So, man, shouts out my boy Lake Lewis over there as well. I agree. Quote, amateur hour refs today. Completely amateur. I mean, the league can't have this every week. Last week versus Indy, with the Indy versus Cleveland, technically the Cleveland was going out bad. I think 2 weeks in a row. Was it Indianapolis? Like 2 weeks in a row. And then today, Washington versus Philly. Don't forget also Washington versus Philly a few weeks ago. And also, you cannot forget the Giants game last year. No way around it. This was bad today and messed with the flow of a really good football game. I mean, even on top of the flow, I would easily argue that the refs literally led to at least 21 Eagles points today. I mean, literally bad call, bad no call, bad call, whatever, in the Eagles' favor, completely just game rigged. Roger Goodell made a call, make sure the Eagles win this, make sure they go back to the Super Bowl type of calls. It just like literally bad call, points for the Eagles. Or even on our end, no call or bad call towards us, we have momentum to go down and score, completely kills our drive, we don't score. So you can argue they gave the Eagles points and took away points for us at the same time. I'm telling you, man, refs about to have some of us boycotting, man, at a certain point. It's too bad. About to have people out here watching college football only. I'm telling you. And even the announcers would discuss it a few times. You can hear them on the broadcast live like, man, I don't know about that. Like, that's a bad, weird call. Like, literally saying stuff like that for all of us to hear. And what's frustrating as a fan is that even when the announcers, the commentators say it, what can we do? Nothing. The refs just cheat us, and then it's time to move on. That Logan Thomas call literally had the commentators sick to their stomach. That personal foul, they were like, what? And hey, what can we do? Commentators can't affect it, the fans can't affect it, the players can't do anything, the coaches can't do anything. Now what? I guess we got to up our bag for the refs, man. The Eagles paying them a little bit more, man. I just don't get what the refs are doing right now, man. I mean, look at this picture right here. You can tell the Eagles paid them. And again, I'm always the type to say that we know going into games the refs are never going to be on our side. They're not even going to be fair, let alone be on our side to where we get the advantage in calls. Never. So we need to go into every game assuming that it's us versus our opponent and the refs at the same time. So I'm never the type to try to give excuses, but these were like really blatant, like, what is going on calls. Pretty much just as bad as that Giants game from last year. Like, what can you do when the calls literally lead directly to points very soon after? Like the touchdown after the Devonta Smith call. If that call, that terrible ref selling the game for the Commanders didn't happen, they don't score a touchdown there. There were just so many calls that literally led to points immediately afterwards, like a play or two, or maybe a few after that, immediately afterwards. It was terrible. Now moving on to Rivera. I mean, would you believe that we were up 24-17 with the ball at one point in this game? Would you believe that? We ended up losing 38-31, but at a certain point it was 38-24, and at a certain point we were up 17-24 at a certain point, and then they just went and scored 21 unanswered all in the fourth quarter, and then we went and scored a touchdown late, but I mean, it was too late at that point. I mean, I just don't get it. If y'all can explain it to me, man, let me know. Please let me know what happened. Rivera, again, I blame the refs a lot, but Rivera earns a lot of blame. A lot of people earn a lot of blame. We're going to get to it. Also, speaking of Rivera, we're 0-3 in the division. 2 losses to the Eagles. Really good team, and a lot of people probably didn't even predict us to beat the Eagles in any of those games. But again, it's how we lost that makes it bad. And then the fact that you lost to the Giants, not only to the terrible Giants, but the way you lost to the Giants. 0-3 in the division is just completely, basically room for firing. Because, I mean, again, if you can't beat the Giants, if you can't beat the Bears, I mean, the way we lost to the Bears as well, and then you're already 0-3 in the division, and do you expect to beat the Giants after the way we lost to them already? Do you expect to beat the Cowboys, who are out here balling right now and starting to catch stride? And if you go 0-6 in the division, or at best 2-4, as what it's looking like right now, if we beat the Giants and the Cowboys one each, and I'm not sure about that happening. 2-4 is, you should make the playoffs just off of that alone as well. So, I mean, what do we expect to get out of this season at this point? Are we just like, all right, let's go ahead and rebuild? Is it that time? Also, shouts out my boy Tan Top Podcast again. I think it's important to point out that on top of being 3-5, 2 of the wins are against teams with two or less wins, and both wins required a second half comeback. So context definitely matters. I know we have 3 wins, but 2 of them are against teams with 2 wins or less, and we had to come from behind in both of them. Come on, dog. I mean, how good are these 3 wins? I completely agree. Context definitely matters. Also, moving on, I just don't understand what Ron Rivera was doing with not challenging. I know the Eagles ran up to go ahead and snap the ball immediately, and they didn't even really have a play call. Jalen Hurts is pretty much just out there doing backyard football, just freestyling. They were like, we got to get this play off no matter what. But Ron Rivera already talked about it during the ref portion, but how do you not call that in that situation? I don't care how unsure you are about him making that catch or not. In the situation that was, you got to call that challenge. I don't care what's going on. So, hey, man, we ended up not winning, and us not challenging that play was probably the backbreaker, probably the whole momentum shifter. You can easily argue. Also, shouts out about my boy Mark Taylor for pointing this out as well. Mark Tyler, my fault. It's a good point. You take out two Ron Rivera guys on the O-line, Nick Gates and Sadiq Charles, and now this O-line is suddenly better. But at the same time, to be completely fair, Chris Paul and Tyler Larson are also Ron Rivera guys, but still, the more highly coveted, the higher draft pick, Sadiq Charles over Chris Paul, the more highly paid and more coveted free agency signing, the flashier free agency signing, Nick Gates over Tyler Larson. So it's just still mismanagement by Ron Rivera, because even though all four people involved are Ron Rivera guys, the two guys that are outperforming the other two guys, those two guys that are playing better are like lesser coveted guys, a lower draft pick, 7th round draft pick, and a free agency signing that nobody was excited about. So it's just like you got to be better. You got to do a better job at evaluating talent, man. Just plain and simple. And again, like I talked about earlier, it just seems like either the defense fails us or the offense fails us. Or even if it's not the whole defense as a whole or the offense as a whole, is random players. We just can't hold it all together. And at a certain point, you just got to be like, man, it's got to be the head honcho in charge, because there always seems to be a leak. Also, shouts out to my boy Mason Kinahan for tweeting out this picture right here. But it just really feels like the Commanders are literally going down to the left more every week. I mean, look at this right now. Look at the teams that we're surrounded by. I mean, look at this. The Panthers, the Cardinals, Raiders, Bears, and the Broncos are the company that we keep. You are the company that you keep. Look at the company that we keep, man. It's ridiculous, dog. It's time to go, man. It's time to go. We got to change something. Shouts out my boy Tay and Todd Podcast for this as well. After benching Forbes, giving him 0 snaps 2 weeks ago and 5 snaps last week, you thought it was the best idea to give him the most action he's seen in 3 weeks lined up against A.J. Brown. You just felt like that was a good idea? Jack Del Rio, Ron Rivera, whoever allowed that. I know Jack Del Rio is supposed to be running the defense, but Ron Rivera, at a certain point, you got to start micromanaging. Like, that doesn't sound like a good idea. I know this is Jack Del Rio's defense. I gave him the keys, but that doesn't sound like a good idea. Maybe I should step in and stop whatever we got going on. I mean, shouts out my boy Caleb over there at CXLEBJXSTIN on Twitter. Put it together beautifully. Quote, why do we have to pretend like Ron has accomplished something here? He's supposed to win and improve the roster. The best players we have here before him, besides Chase, who was a slam dunk pick and hasn't even necessarily panned out that great up until this season anyway. Who cares about the culture? You need to win games. And hey, man, that's a great point. I'm not that harsh on Ron Rivera, but it is like literally our best players were guys he didn't draft. So like, now what? Like, what's going on there? Shouts out to at RRRose78 or RROSE78 on Twitter. Brought up another great point. Beautifully said. He was a professional in how he handled the team off the field. Beautiful. Everything off the field, wonderful. Well, except for like these last season or two, when it comes to press conferences, he's been bad as far as answering football questions. But everything else, he's been perfect. Like, he was perfect for what we needed at the time. But he really set this team back with bad free agency signings and poor drafts. I mean, it really feels like the rest of the league is getting further ahead than us. I mean, technically we improved when you add draft picks and free agency signings. You technically do get better. But in comparison, in reference to everybody else took a bigger leap. We went from here to here. Everybody else went from here to here. So in retrospect, technically we got worse when you're looking at the median of the league, basically, as far as talent goes. So technically we are getting worse. I think the biggest failure was Ron, the GM, failing Ron, the coach. Coaches should never have full control. It's very hard. It just rarely works out. Even Bill Belichick is struggling with it right now. I do agree that Ron, the coach, we can debate about whether he was good or not, but Ron, the GM, dog, definitely worse than Ron, the coach. And then also he's starting to lose the locker room, man. I wouldn't say he's full-blown lose the locker room, but you have Jeremy Reeves out here arguing with people on the internet. Yeah, Emmanuel Forbes like weeks ago arguing with people on it. Well, at least deleting his Twitter and stuff like that, caring too much. Then you had Jonathan Allen. I've never seen him come out of character before last week, cussing at JP Finley and everything. Crazy. Then you have De'Ami Brown today, literally just tweeting out, done with this. That's it. Like, he's sick. I mean, it's literally like a trend going on that the players that normally don't even speak out are starting to speak out. You even have Jahan Dotson. He tweeted, what is considered a catch in the NFL? Asking for a friend, unquote. I mean, quotation mark, my fault. But like, literally, like, he has a good point. But a great team typically doesn't have players out here just doing whatever they want to do, going AWOL on the internet, dog. Typically, a great team, everybody holds it together. Don't lash out at reporters. Don't tweet. Don't lash out at fans on Twitter, all of that type of stuff. It's not good, man. And then also, we got to talk about Rivera. And there's a lot of blame to go around, but you are the head honcho. Why do we consistently have away games at home? Philly fans literally ran and took over the stadium, dog. Like, Sam Howell is out here having to deal with crowd noise on third down to get the play in and the play called and all of that type of stuff in Maryland. Like, that's ridiculous, dog. That makes no sense, bro. That makes zero sense, man. We can't keep having away games at home. We had some momentum. You cannot blame the fans. The fans showed up that week 1 game against the Cardinals, and they came ready against the Broncos and all that, and then it just went off the rails after we started losing games the way we shouldn't, against teams we shouldn't lose against. The fans stopped showing up to games. Now you already have people trying to sell their season tickets and try to get them off as quickly as they can for whatever money they can get. About to just give them away for free at this point is bad. So you cannot blame the fans for how we don't have home games. We don't have home games anymore. Already, we started having them after Dan Snyder sold the team to Josh Harris. There was some hope. Sam Howell, the quarterback, Eric Bieniemy, the offensive coordinator, all of that. We had hope coming in here. We had the potential to have some home field advantage for once this season, and we already threw it away, and we're only like halfway through the season. It's ridiculous. Also, shouts out my boy Cody Shook on Twitter. I've brought this up a few weeks ago. What does Rivera actually do? He doesn't call plays on offense. He gave the keys to Eric Bieniemy. He makes the decisions on the plays, the play designs, pacing, all of that type of stuff. He doesn't call plays on defense. Jack Del Rio makes personnel decisions, play calling, all of that type of stuff. He doesn't challenge plays when he should, and he doesn't call timeouts when he should. What does Ron Rivera do besides being a motivational speaker and I guess a partial GM along with Martin Mayhew? Like, what is he actually doing, man? But hey, man, shouts out to Jordan, y'all. Everybody knows Jordan on Twitter. Washington Today and everything, Twitter, Instagram, all of that. He brought up a great point. Ron Rivera, thank you for stabilizing this franchise, and I completely agree. Thank you for all of that and helping to fix the culture. That's something that has to be taken into account when talking about his time here. He has put the team on the right path, but ultimately, the on-the-field product isn't good enough at this point. 4 years in, the results need to be better. It's time to move on. He's a floor raiser, but not a ceiling raiser. We're just never going to be terrible with Ron Rivera. But again, the perpetual middle is the worst you can ever be. I'm telling you, you'd be better off winning only 2 games, getting some really good draft picks, accumulating some draft picks from trading away veteran players, and then turning around within like a year or two, worst 3 years, and being one of the elite teams in the NFL, rather than consistently being this 6 to 8 win team, and you're never going anywhere. You're never going to get any better, and you're more likely to get worse. But as long as you stay afloat, you're never going to be worse enough to get elite players in the draft or even really free agency, the way that we've been, handling that as well. So again, man, Ron, what do you do? But at the same time, man, I know a lot of people are mad at Ron, but honestly, we may need to look at Martin Mayhew the most. Like, if you're looking at track records, Ron Rivera's track record has been average, bad at times and stuff like that. Martin Mayhew's has been terrible. We actually probably should be focusing all of our hate and energy towards Martin Mayhew. I'm not gonna lie. He needs to go first. I know a lot of people saying Ron Rivera needs to go first, and maybe he's 1B, but Martin Mayhew needs to go before everybody else. I'm sick of it. Moving on to Eric Bieniemy. Let's go ahead and start talking about this offense. Let's start to get to some of these position groups. We're already 33 minutes in. We haven't even actually talked about the players for real. And we're still not about to do it because we got to talk about Eric Bieniemy first. Shouts out to Eric Bieniemy for the positive side, changing the game plan, man. I respect the fact that we did everything we could to not allow Sam Howell to get sacked. Of course, we made personnel changes on the offensive line. Nick Gates to Tyler Larson, Sadiq Charles due to injury to Chris Paul. Ricky Strongberg also got hurt as well. We're going to talk about that later. Curtis Samuel and Ricky Strongberg got hurt in this game. But I love the fact that he just was like, all right, offensive line doesn't want to hold up, and I don't necessarily trust this offensive line that much either. We're going to ask Sam Howell to get the ball out of his hands way quicker and way sooner than we should. And that's not how football should be played, but that's the way we gotta play it. And Sam Howell was averaging 1.93 seconds time to throw in the first half per throw. That's crazy. That's terrible. Like, that literally, you shouldn't have to live under conditions like that as an offensive coordinator and a quarterback. You shouldn't have to throw the ball within 2 seconds every play on average. That's ridiculous. That means some plays we would throw it even quicker than the 1.93. That makes zero sense. How are you supposed to attack deep down the field if you got to get the ball out of your hands in 2 seconds? Come on, dog. But shouts out to Eric Bieniemy for making those adjustments sooner this time, going in with that game plan rather than waiting so late against the Giants to finally change to that game plan too little too late. Also, I know our offense is really good. We had 8.1 yards per play, 17 points at the half and things like that, up to a certain point, up to the halftime. But up to halftime, we had 26 passes and 7 runs. That's not balanced. So are we complaining about that? How do we feel? Because, hey, man, even though the offense was not bad, to average 6 yards per carry and to only run the ball 13 times makes zero sense. None, like at all. Brian Robinson had 10 carries for 59 yards. Why are we not running the ball more than that? That boy averaged 5.9 yards per carry by himself. What are we doing? Also, Eric Bieniemy. Again, great game overall, but I got to nitpick. I like the decision to go for it on that 4th and 1 in the first or second quarter, whatever that was in the first half. But that play design was terrible. Why did we go empty backfield? I would have just ran the ball. But even if you're going to pass the ball, at least make them think you may run it and force them to put some people in the box to stop that run, and then you can throw it. I guess anything but just completely going empty backfield, letting them know pre-snap that you are definitely throwing the ball. Like, come on, dog. Like, what was that? That play call was one of the worst of the game, one of the worst of the season. Again, I don't hate the decision to go for 4th and 1. I wanted to go for it on 4th and 1, but why not just go ahead and run the ball with Brian Robinson? They couldn't stop us up to that point. They couldn't stop us at all at any point in the game. Why do we not just run the ball? I mean, again, the same logic. The Eagles, that touchdown to DeAndre Swift towards the end of the game, it may have been the last touchdown they had of the game, the final touchdown that the Eagles had, to put them up to 38 points. They did the tush push formation, and then instead of actually doing the tush push, they handed it outside to DeAndre Swift. Make them think you're gonna do something else. That's something that you're making them think that you're gonna do is so unstoppable. They gotta dedicate most of the resources, if not all of the defense, to stopping it. So just look like you're gonna do that, do something else. Why didn't we line up to run the ball, and then we're gonna end up, I don't understand. So yeah, man, you could argue honestly that killed our momentum. We were up at that point by like 2 scores, and after that, it just got ugly. It just got really, it literally, like, the momentum just left us right then and there. And I just don't understand why Brian Robinson had one of his best games of his career on a per carry basis, and we just stopped giving him carries. It just seems like Eric Bieniemy at this point, the way he's playing, like, oh man, offense, hold on, whoa, slow down. We're doing too well. I want a high draft pick. I'm about to take over as head coach. That's what it feels like sometimes, where Eric Bieniemy just makes he has a great game overall sometimes, but just has that one play. Like, what are you doing? Like, you trying to sell? But hey, man, moving on to quarterback Sam Howell. First half stats: 24 of 26, 227 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns, and 0 interceptions with a 17-10 lead. Should have been higher than that if it weren't for the Eric Bieniemy mess up on that 4th and 1, like I just said. Man, first half was crazy, dog. And then at a certain point where the Eagles were starting to gain momentum, Sam Howell and Eric Bieniemy, got to give them credit, went on a 14-play, 75-yard drive that ended with a 7-yard touchdown pass to Logan Thomas on 3rd and goal. Perfect ball placement on the throw, everything. 11 pass calls, 3 runs. Again, to go back to Eric Bieniemy, not great. But Sam Howell scrambled twice, so technically it was like 6 pass plays to 5 runs, but it was only 11 pass calls to 3 runs. Sam Howell just took it himself. That wasn't a design run from Eric Bieniemy. Now, Sam Howell ended the day 39 of 52, 397 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, 114 passer rating with 1 interception. He's the future, dog. You can build around Sam Howell. I refuse to believe you can't build around Sam Howell, especially on a 5th-round pick rookie contract. That allows you to have the money to pay other guys to be better. Now, it's kind of contradictory with the fact that it's time that we need to rebuild. But hey, man, still has a rookie contract for another couple of years. We can get it together by then, man. But again, even at 39 to 52, I felt like he was technically more efficient than that, but he just had to throw it out of bounds sometimes. You also had those Terry McLaurin drops. I'm not too mad at him. But on the negative side, That turnover, it's kind of 50-50 because I feel like it was pass interference on Terry McLaurin and also it went through Terry McLaurin's hands. If Terry McLaurin goes up there and grabs that, we're like, oh man, Sam Howell threw a dot. He threw it where only the receiver could get it. But instead it goes through Terry McLaurin's hands. It gets intercepted by Blankenship behind Terry McLaurin. So I mean, kind of a bad decision, kind of throw it a little high and things like that. But if the pass is caught, we're celebrating Sam Howell like he's out here throwing like Pat Mahomes, throwing dots left and right. So kind of a negative play, but I'm not going to get on him too much. But then at the end, dog, when we needed Ewan McLaurin the most, you're throwing it at his ankles, and he's not catching passes he should catch. I think you can throw blame everywhere, dog. Sam Howell was great, but man, when we needed you in those clutch moments to keep throwing it at Terry McLaurin's knees and ankles was making me mad. Terry McLaurin has to catch those, and we're going to talk about that when we get to the receiver part of this video soon. But dog, you got come on, man. When did you just suddenly become inaccurate? I mean, the throw to Antonio Gibson on the sideline, the play before you threw it to Terry McLaurin's ankles, like literally the play immediately after that was when you threw it to Terry McLaurin. That throw to Antonio Gibson was ridiculous. He couldn't have walked it up and handed it to him better than that. And those are the type of plays that you got to do if you want to attack down the field, but you're trying to get it out of your hands within 2 seconds, just like against the Giants last week. You're having to throw deep bombs extra early before the receiver, running back, whoever is even open. And Sam Howell threw those perfectly. Pat Mahomes couldn't have thrown it any better than that. So it's just like, how do you go from that play to the very next play? Terry McLaurin wide open, throwing it at his ankles. And then you did it twice in the same drive when we needed it the most, bruh. But at the end of the day, Sam Howell is on pace to throw for 4,500 yards on the season. That's incredible. Moving on to the running back position. Again, I feel like we got our guy in Sam Howell, in my opinion. I wasn't even a big fan of him out of the draft, coming out of college, out of UNC, but he's shown me enough at the NFL level. We can work with this. You put a better team around him, better O-line, better defense that can actually do what they're supposed to do, a better coaching, we can win with this guy, bro. If other teams can win with quarterbacks that I think are lesser than Sam Howell at this point already, only 9 games into his career, I think we can win with Sam Howell, dog. But hey, man, moving on to the running backs. Brian Robinson, like I said in the intro, Brian Robinson is the way better pass protector. On the play earlier when like sometime in the first half when Sam Howell kind of overthrew Byron Pringle, but Byron Pringle also tripped up a little bit. Sam Howell had to throw off his back foot. That's why it was so inaccurate. You know why he had to throw off his back foot? Because Antonio Gibson got ran over in pass protection right in front of him. Sam Howell has to sense that he's about to get hit, and he has to hurry up and off his back foot, sling it up, and slightly overthrown. But then later on in the game, when Brian Robinson has to pass protect for Sam Howell is able to deliver a dot and step up into his throw. You know why? Because Brian Robinson actually pass protected the guy blitzing on him. Shouts out to Brian Robinson for that, man. So that's the difference between Brian Robinson and Antonio Gibson in pass protection. I felt like that was a big point of emphasis that a lot of people need to notice, especially moving forward. When we're talking about being sellers, who do we keep? Do we prioritize Brian Robinson or Antonio Gibson? That's one of those things. Brian Robinson was great on the ground. Antonio Gibson was great in the passing game. Brian Robinson was pretty decent in the passing game as well. I believe he did have, he had 2 catches for 20 yards, man. So yeah, Brian Robinson was killing it out there. So shouts out to him, man. Shouts out to all of them, man. Antonio Gibson, 2 carries for 14 yards. Again, like, why are we not running the ball, period? Everybody. Brian Robinson or Antonio Gibson. And then Antonio Gibson, 5 catches, 28 yards. He did his thing in the receiving game as well. And then, even though he wanted to bobble it, that Sam Howell perfect throw was just ridiculous. Good catch there, though. Moving on to the receivers, man. Let's go ahead. First of all, Curtis Samuel was ruled out for the remainder of the game with a toe injury. Thank goodness that Jamison Crowder and Jahan Dotson were ready to step up, because Curtis Samuel's been our second best receiver so far this year. So when he got hurt, I was worried, but everybody else stepped up, man. And again, just to go ahead and get it out the way, Terry McLaurin, absolutely great game. But those 2 drops killed us. And then he made a crazy catch later on after that. So it was like he kind of re-clutched. He ended up being clutched by the end of the game. But those 2 drops are huge, man. That was literally like the loss. But I'm going to always say it's never one play. It's never one player. Technically, it was 2 plays. But still, it's never one player's fault. So even though we're all looking at Terry McLaurin like, dang, you lost us the game, we should have never been in that situation anyway. Again, the refs doing what they were doing. defense doing what they were doing, all of that type of stuff. But you got to catch those, dog. Again, a lot of blame goes to Sam Howell for how inaccurate those throws were. But at the same time, Terry McLaurin, if you are a top 10 receiver in this league, you got to catch those. And it's really interesting, too, because Terry McLaurin was catching the Heineke hospital balls all season last year, but he can't catch those from Sam Howell. I guess at the end of the day, the conclusion to take from this is that Sam Howell prefers it late and too high over early and too low any day of the week. So, hey, keep note of that. That's one thing that I'm starting to think of just now as I'm reviewing the game right now. I didn't think about this before I started recording just now. Maybe Sam Howell prefers it higher and late rather than low any day of the week. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to get on Terry McLaurin too much because there's been so many games where he's been our only bright spot, or there's been games where he's clutched up and won us the game. Most notably, some Falcons games that I'll never not appreciate him and Heineke forever, because y'all know I hate the Falcons more than any other team in the NFL. So, hey, man, he's been so reliable so long. I'm not going to kill him for that, dog. I'm sorry. I'm just not. I'm going to talk about him. I'm going to tell him to his face what he did. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to talk about it in my video, but I'm not going to kill him, dog. That loss isn't on you, man. We're not going to blame Terry for this loss overall. It's a lot of blame to go around. Also, shouts out Jamison Crowder because he balled out, man. Jamison Crowder had himself a crazy day. 7 catches, 95 yards, caught every target his way. Can't say the same thing for Terry McLaurin with 12 targets, only 5 catches. That doesn't sound that great. Even though he had a good game overall, 12 targets, 5 catches is not good. But Jamison Crowder, 7 targets, 7 catches, 95 yards, and a touchdown. Caught everything thrown towards him. Again, Sam Howell was dealing because I can't believe I skipped over it. Sam Howell, not only statistically, he has some of the best throws, not only have I seen from him all year, but some of the best throws I'm seeing from any quarterback this year. Let's not forget that. But going back to the receivers, Jamison Crowder had himself a day. Is it time to say that Jamison Crowder was our best free agency signing this offseason? Like, I mean, who was better? Who was more impactful? He's our starting punt returner. He's returning the ball really well for us. I forgot Dax Milne even existed at this point. We're not even talking about him anymore. There's no like, oh, Dax Milne, when he gets back healthy, maybe. No, Jamison Crowder got it for the further notice, the further future. Best free agency signing at this point, in my opinion. I feel like that's something that not a lot of people are talking about, especially after this game. Then Jahan Dotson had his best game of arguably his career, man. Best game of his career. I mean, the first 7 games this season, he had 183 yards total with only 1 touchdown. Today, he finished with 8 receptions, 108 yards, and 1 touchdown. So, he almost had as many yards as he did all season just in this one game, and he already doubled his touchdowns in one game. Just that's crazy, man. That says 2 things. He was terrible the first 7 games, but he was also really, really good this game. Jahan Dotson balled out. Shouts out to me too, because I finally was like, man, Jahan Dotson can't keep being bad, and I started in my fantasy team, and it paid off. I'm proud of myself for doing that, man. I hooped today with that, man. I hooped today. Now, and also, man, Byron Pringle, I'm sorry, because he had 1 target, but it technically didn't count. I don't know what that was. Oh, going back to Eric Bieniemy too. We already talked about running backs. We already talked about Eric Bieniemy. What was that screen pass to Alex Armall? Sometimes you try to outsmart yourself too much. I love Alex Armall. He's from Atlanta. I root for him, but he's a fullback tight end. Don't throw screens to him ever again. I know it was like they'll never expect this. They'll never see this coming. Alex Armall in the screen. They didn't. And it was wide open. But Alex Armall is so slow and he doesn't have great vision that what could have been, if it was Antonio Gibson, literally probably like a 40-yard touchdown wherever we were on the field. Literally should have been a touchdown. Wide open. Perfectly blocked and everything. Ended up being like a 0-yard gain. Maybe a gain a couple of inches. Terrible. Now, moving on again. Sorry, I'm all over the place. Tight end wise, shouts out to Logan Thomas. 8 targets, 6 catches, 44 yards, and a touchdown. Again, that personal foul, I don't blame him for that. That was just the refs having to make up a call because it was only about time. I mean, they went so long without hating on this. It was just like due time. They had to invent a call out of nowhere, and that was the opportunity to get it done. Logan Thomas, Now, tight end position, just in general, a lot of positions, secondary especially. I'm going to have to look at the all-22 to truly see how good or bad they were. But I like the fact that John Bates caught that 1 pass, his only target for 17 yards. And Logan Thomas felt dependable at times in that game, unlike against the Giants game. So I appreciate you, Logan Thomas. Shouts out to you. And Cole Turner, just to let you know, was already out. He was inactive entering this game. So if you were wondering where Cole Turner was this game, he just straight up didn't play at all. Moving on to the offensive line. Just to update y'all, Ricky Strongberg went down during an extra point play. Like, it wasn't even a real play. It was an extra point. And then he ended up getting hurt. It was really bad. He had to be carted off. It was looking like his right leg. It looked like one of those injuries where he may just be done for season. So remember that when we talk about this draft class so far later on in the video. Emmanuel Forbes, first round pick. Quan Martin, second round pick. Ricky Strongberg, third round pick. Probably already out for season. This draft class is insane. Shouts out to the O-line, though. Again, I give Eric Bieniemy and Sam Howell a lot of credit because I'm not even necessarily sure if the offensive line was just that much better or just because we just got the ball out of Sam Howell's hands way quicker that it just made the O-line look better. But either way, we were on pace to have our first game this season without allowing a sack. First game. And Andrew Wiley gets beat that bad on a game-losing strip sack to Hassan Reddick, man. Yeah. We already switched out Nick Gates for Tyler Larson. That helped. Is it time to switch out Andrew Wiley for Cornelius Lucas? I've basically been screaming that since Cornelius Lucas had that ridiculously great game against the Falcons. It may be that time, man. You gave up on Nick Gates, the free agency signing. Is it time to give up on Andrew Wiley, dog? I'm not gonna lie. Now moving on to the defense, let's start with Jack Del Rio. Shouts out some notable positives. Again, at a certain point in this game, the Eagles only had 17 points in the fourth quarter. Like the whole game, they had 17 points at a certain point in the fourth quarter. I mean, I don't want to give them too much credit for that because of the way the game ended, but we got to remember we were doing something at first. Also, somebody finally defeated the tush push and we forced a fumble on it. That was amazing, man. Ball don't lie too because the refs tried to hate. They had a crazy call. I forgot the exact call, but the refs came up with a super. Oh yeah, it was a pass interference, a illegal hands to the face. They called they threw 2 flags just in case because we're trying to win the games for the Eagles. These are the refs talking. We got to win this game for the Eagles. They already gave us the bag. We got to win. So let's throw 2 flags just in case. So, we could just, they can accept one of them. And then I think it was like a third down play. We would have gotten off the field. At worst, it would have been a field goal for the Eagles. And then they ended up being like first and goal at the 1 yard line. Like refs just coming in the clutch to help the Eagles right there. But ball don't lie. And we forced a fumble immediately afterwards, man. And again, like I said earlier, you wouldn't believe, looking at the score now, 38-31, that at a certain point in the fourth quarter, the Eagles only had 17 points. You wouldn't believe it. You wouldn't believe it if I told you if you didn't watch the game. And now the Commanders' defense has allowed 38 points in the game to a team that turned the ball over twice at the goal line. Within the 3 yard line, 2 forced fumbles. Cameron Curl with a strip one time that Fedarian Mathis recovered, and then the tush push play where we recovered. I mean, the Eagles easily could have had 50 points on us. That's 14 points right there. And they only ran 65 offensive plays. 50 should have been points on 65 plays. It's crazy. Shouts out to Cameron Curl and those guys for making plays when they needed to. But that's ridiculous, Jack Del Rio. This is the 5th game of the season out of 8 games that the Commanders have allowed 30-plus points. Inexcusable. Obviously, not all in the defense, but a large portion of the damage was today. Of course, man. Yeah, I mean, come on, dog. Jack Del Rio, come on, bro. Also, shouts out to Grant Paulson for pulling these stats together. This is how opposing number 1 receiving options have fared over us the last 6 weeks since we've just basically been on a losing streak, even with the Falcons winning in the middle of it. Week 3, Stephon Diggs, 8 catches, 111 yards. Week 4, A.J. Brown, 9 catches, 175 yards, 2 touchdowns. DJ Moore, Week 5, 8 catches, 230 yards, 3 touchdowns. Drake London, Week 6, 9 catches, 125 yards. Probably a career game for him. Week 7, Darren Waller, 7 catches, 98 yards, 1 touchdown. The DJ Moore game was like a record-setting game for certain things. And then Week 8, today, A.J. Brown, 8 catches, 130 yards, 2 touchdowns. Number 1 receivers kill us, dog. Like, since Week 3, Darren Waller had the worst game against us out of every number 1 receiving target with 7 catches, 98 yards, and a touchdown. That's the worst one by far. That's terrible, man. And then, of course, with Jack Del Rio, you know what he's good for. Every week, we're going to have a miscommunication. We're going to have a receiver wide open down the field for an easy touchdown for absolutely no reason. That is the Jack Del Rio signature move at this point. And again, like I brought up earlier, shouts out to Tan Top Podcast for this. After benching Emmanuel Forbes, giving him 0 snaps 2 weeks ago, 5 snaps last week, you thought it was a good idea to match him up against A.J. Brown the next week. I don't even understand the logic behind that at all, man. I mean, that just made me so mad thinking about it. I just got hungry. I almost want to stop recording this video so I can go eat, but I'm gonna go ahead and we're gonna tough it out. We're gonna get through this and I'll eat while I'm editing, I guess. Now moving on to the D-line. Hey man, it's really interesting because with trade rumors going around, Montez Sweat had the better day. I'm not gonna lie, Montez Sweat definitely had the better day, man. My boy Chase Young was nowhere to be found, bro. My boy Chase Young had 1 tackle compared to Montez Sweat, who had 5 tackles, 1 sack, 2 tackles for losses, and a QB hit. It's crazy because Chase Young has outperformed Montez Sweat in every metric other than sacks all year this year. And he did play 1 less game than Montez, and he was only a half a sack behind. I think Montez Sweat had 5.5 sacks. Chase Young had like 5 or something like that. Or maybe he already surpassed them after the Giants game. I can't remember. But either way, they were neck and neck in sacks. But Chase Young played 1 less game. But for some reason today against the Eagles, Montez Sweat had the way better game for the first time all season. Chase Young has been outperforming him. So it's like once we get to the trade deadline, what happened, Chase Young? While Montez Sweat trying to get more draft value in return for the Commanders in a potential trade than you are. What happened? And then Jonathan Allen, that boy went on that super rant cussing at JP Finley about how he's sick and tired of everybody not doing their job, and he's sick of us always supposed to be good but not being good. And then you disappear today. I mean, was Jonathan Allen's name called once today? Deron Payne made several plays. I remember Deron Payne. Shouts out to him. But I don't know where Jonathan Allen went. John Ridgeway made a few plays but was getting held. Case Toohill made a play. I think he may have gotten rewarded with a sack on that one time. Jalen Hurts tried to escape the pocket and then got down like right at the line of scrimmage. I don't remember. But yeah, I don't know where Chase Young was. I don't know where Jonathan Allen was. Also, was this Montez Sweat's last game as a Commander, dog? I mean, this may be somebody's last game between Jonathan Allen, Montez Sweat, and Chase Young. Quite likely one of their last games, maybe even more than one of them. But at the end of the game, man, Montez Sweat was technically the last player off the field, even though, like, he wasn't the last one walking away. I feel like that's being blown out of proportion. There were other people behind him, but they just ran past him faster. So technically, Montez Sweat was the last one off the field. He also did a jersey swap with Josh Sweat, but I feel like there's nothing to read into that too deeply. I feel like that was more so just because they have the same last name. So now he has an Eagle Sweat, Josh Sweat has a Commander Sweat jersey. I think that's all it is. But the way he was walking slower than everybody else did kind of look like I'm taking in the sights. Maybe he knows he's on the way to getting traded, and it was just kind of like, let me soak this up, my last game in the Maryland as a Commanders player. I don't know. That's what it kind of looked like. I'm not gonna jump to conclusions too much, but that's what it kind of looked like. Linebacker wise, another position where I gotta really look at the all-22 to get a good feel for what was going on. I didn't really notice Jamin Davis bad or good. He just kind of, it didn't seem like he was out there. Khalid Hudson, kind of the same thing. I noticed him in coverage one play, he was kind of off, but Jalen Hurts made a bad throw, so it ended up being incomplete. Other than that, I didn't really notice those guys. But you know who I did notice? David Mayo. Yet another game of getting abused in coverage. The game plan isn't, oh, let me make sure I target A.J. Brown a certain amount of times. Let me make sure I target our running backs a certain amount, Devonta Smith a certain amount, Dallas Goedert. No, the game plan, again, since David Mayo's been a starter for us, since Cody Barton got hurt early in the Giants game, is whoever David Mayo was covering, zone, man coverage, whatever, throw it to that guy. Good things will happen. And that's what happens. It doesn't matter. So you kind of got to give Jack Del Rio a little slack there, but at the same time, you can't, because where's Jabril Cox? We're to the point where it's like, why not play Jabril Cox? You elevated him from the practice squad and he didn't play on defense. Why not at this point? David Mayo's horrible in coverage. He's decent against the run. He's supposed to be great against the run, but I didn't even feel like he was great against the run today. So what was he on the field for at all? If he's going to literally be a liability in coverage to the point that other people feel like they have to overexert themselves to make up for his lack of coverage, and now the defense is collapsing. Also, another thing, has anybody else noticed since Cody Barton got hurt and we switched to David Mayo that Jamin Davis just suddenly seems like he doesn't exist? I mean, you're forgetting Jamin Davis is even on the team since David Mayo's been out there. When Cody Barton was out there, he was making plays, forcing fumbles, getting interceptions, 1v1 against a generational talent, I will argue, on Bijan Robinson. And now David Mayo is out there. Jamin Davis seems like he's disappeared and reverted back to his before 2023 self, where he's kind of out there, but he's not necessarily a playmaker. Hey, man, the David Mayo effect, bro. I'm trying to tell you. Now moving on to the cornerbacks. A.J. Brown has the most consecutive games of 125 plus receiving yards in NFL history. This man set in records, and you know where it started? Against us. Week 4, 9 catches, 175 yards, 2 touchdowns. Then he kept doing it week 5, week 7, and then now week 8, 8 catches, 130 yards, 2 touchdowns. So again, AJ Brown has now set an NFL record for most consecutive games with 125 receiving yards, and we're literally the bookends of that record. The first and the final game for him to complete that record. Who knows if he'll continue it, but that's just terrible. The Commanders are in the record books for the wrong reasons this season in a lot of different ways, even just beyond that. Also, AJ Brown against the Commanders this year, if you just want to add it up, 17 catches over the course of 2 games, 81 receiving percentage. So if he gets thrown the ball gets thrown towards him, he catches it 81% of the time. That's ridiculous. 305 yards, 17.9 yards per catch, 4 touchdowns, 6 catches of 20 plus yards. 14 of his catches were for first downs, and 2 defensive penalties drawn, pass interference. That is ridiculous, dog. What happened last year when Benjamin St-Juste shut him down? What happened? And then Tay Top Podcast did the math. Thank you for this. If AJ Brown played the Commanders every week this season, he would finish with 144 receptions, 2,592 receiving yards, and 34 touchdowns. That is terrible, mind-blowingly awful. Just to put it in perspective, man. And also, when Jalen Hurts targeted AJ Brown and Devonta Smith today together, they went 15 for 15 targets, 15 catches. That's atrocious in itself. 229 yards and 3 touchdowns. Literally perfect passer rating when targeting Devonta Smith and AJ Brown. At this point, they should have just thrown it to him all game. Either throw it to whoever David Mayo is covering or throw it to Devonta Smith or AJ Brown. Even though one of those Devonta Smith catches technically shouldn't have been a catch. But hey, man, I'm not going to get back into that, man. I'm already too tired for that. Also, man, we even had Julio Jones, a shell of himself, getting touchdowns against us, dog. Double coverage. What's going on with that? But St-Juste had a pretty good coverage game most of the game. I know a lot of people going to talk about how he got burnt and stuff. And yeah, he got beat at times and stuff like that, but a lot of times he was right there. But there were just certain situations where he got beat by a great throw and a ridiculous catch, and there's no defense in the NFL at all for that. I mean, a lot of defense is honestly just hoping elite players don't make elite plays. Jalen Hurts threw some super dipping dots, and then AJ Brown was making ridiculous catches on them. And so I've been telling y'all, great offense will always beat great defense in today's NFL. That's point blank, period. That's not up for debate. That's just the way it's designed. Offense beats defense equals more points equals more views equals more money for the NFL. It's literally set up to protect the quarterback no matter what, to protect the receivers no matter what. The way that the NFL is set up, not even just rules, but just strategy, anything. Great offense is always going to be great defense. A great throw and a great catch is always going to be great coverage. So again, I'm just saying all of that to say that we shouldn't fault Benjamin St-Juste too much. I don't know what happened to shut down Benjamin St-Juste against AJ Brown last year, Benjamin St-Juste, but hey, man, he wasn't terrible, but he also wasn't great as well. I'm not gonna sit here and act like he was great. Kendall Fuller and Danny Johnson was straight too, but I felt like they made their marks the most with tackling. They had some great tackling. We already know Kendall Fuller is our best tackling cornerback, our best screen blowing up cornerback, and he did that today. So shouts out to Kendall Fuller for that at least. Also, man, shouts out my boy Eric Sully at Commanders Realm, because I agree. I'm not a big fan of judging draft picks / classes in their first year. You really shouldn't. But man, find it hard to believe that Forbes will go from unplayable to worth the 16th overall pick. I mean, maybe it's going to be a Jamin Davis type of situation where he's never going to be worth his first round pick, but at the very least he'll be playable and pretty good and fairly consistent and makes the occasional plays. But it's not looking like he'll ever live up to the 16th overall pick at this point. Again, it's only 8 games into a season, and technically he's only played in 5 or 6 of them, but still, dog. I don't know what happened to the version of him I saw in the offseason, but that's crazy. Also, shouts out to Darrell Green, because this is crazy. I don't know if y'all peeped this before the game. Darrell Green was being honored today. Like, honored by the Commanders, the Burgundy and Gold organization, all of that. He went out of his way when asked a question as far as talking about rookie cornerback Emmanuel Forbes struggling. He said, quote, "I'm very interested in him. I've had conversations about him. Truthfully, I can help him in 10 minutes. I'm going to cross a line. He's not getting the help he should get. That's all I'm going to say about that." Unquote. That is crazy, dog. Darrell Green is basically saying, yeah, Emmanuel Forbes has some talent. He has some traits, and it's not his fault. It's the coaching staff. They're not coaching him the right way. They're not getting them right the way that they should. That's crazy, man. That's very damning from Darrell Green himself. Again, on the day that he's being honored. Like, he was like, hey, man, I appreciate everything y'all are doing, but I got to call BS where I see it. Do y'all agree with Darrell Green there, where it's not necessarily Emmanuel Forbes, it's more so the coaching? Really interesting. Also, Emmanuel Forbes and Jartavius Quan Martin. Our first and second round picks today played 5 snaps each, 10 snaps total from your first and second round picks. If Reek Strongberg got hurt, so to make it even worse, he's out for probably the rest of the season. Only played probably a couple of like 1 snap on special teams because he didn't start the offensive line, so he probably played 1 snap. At most 3 on extra points today, special teams, and he got hurt. So our top 3 picks at best had 12, 13 snaps total today. That's absolutely inexcusable. I can understand if it's the 49ers because you have so much talent top to bottom, all pros. Anybody you draft is not going to be ready to start over those all pro, Pro Bowl level players. That's not the case for us, man. So we're a bad team and we have bad draft picks. That's inexcusable, dog. That makes 0 sense. The first and second round draft picks and Emmanuel Forbes and Quan Martin have now gone 3 weeks in a row where they both played less than 11 snaps combined, dog. Come on, dog. And again, you're going to throw Emmanuel Forbes out there after barely playing against A.J. Brown. I mean, Emmanuel Forbes only played 5 snaps, and 2 of them, he gave up a 3rd and 11 on A.J. Brown and a touchdown to A.J. Brown. I mean, Emmanuel Forbes, yeah, you're bad. But also Martin Mayhew, Ron Rivera, what's going on with your team management? And also Jack Del Rio, what's going on with your coaching? What's going on? And it's just crazy because speaking of Quan Martin and Emmanuel Forbes, one of A.J. Brown's touchdown, he literally caught it on both of those draft picks. The first and second round draft pick basically got dunked on by A.J. Brown, bruh. That's crazy, dog. That's terrible. The 2023 draft so far is terrible. Again, maybe they have time to redeem themselves, but again, the first 3 draft picks were pretty much a waste. 4th round draft pick went to IR, but that was because he was so not ready to, he was so unplayable that they stowed him away on IR for a little boo-boo. So first 4 draft picks a waste. 5th round draft pick, KJ Henry, I don't remember. I'm not sure if he's even played at all this season. Waste of draft pick. 6th round pick, Chris Rodriguez, maybe has carried the ball like 10 times total this season. So that's your best, that's your only contributing draft pick so far. Your 6th round draft pick that has 10, probably 10 at best 12 carries so far this season total. This is terrible, dog. This is one of the worst draft classes I've ever seen. Not only just as a Commanders fan, as a Commanders team, any year. This is ridiculous. And so I see a lot of people saying that, yeah, we should have gotten Christian Gonzalez. And I can't argue against that. I mean, going into the draft, of course, and I still kind of am a bigger fan of Christian Gonzalez than Emmanuel Forbes. But since we drafted Emmanuel Forbes, I'm just the type of guy, I'm glass half full. I'm like, we can make it work. And I like Forbes. I like Gonzalez more. But we got to stop acting like if we would have drafted Gonzalez, we would be undefeated right now. People got to stop with that type of talk. We got to stop with that. You got to remember also, domino effect, butterfly effect, whatever you want to say. Christian Gonzalez is out for season. Maybe if we drafted him, he wouldn't be. But Christian Gonzalez wouldn't make enough of a difference for this season to be savable right now. Point blank, period. So we're not going to place all of the blame on Emmanuel Forbes. Some of the blame, a lot of the blame goes on him, but not all of it. We got to stop that. Special teams wise, before we get up out of here, before we move on to probably the part that most of y'all care about in this video, Joey Sly went slap diddly. Jamison Crowder had a great game, most notably as a receiver, but Joey Sly hooped today, y'all. Even his onside kick at the end was great. It wasn't recovered by us, but that was a pretty good onside kick. But to make every kick that you are asked to kick today, every extra point, every kick, he made a 56-yarder. I was nervous about that. Then we had the nerve to false start on it, and I should have talked about this because that was Chris Paul earlier. Chris Paul had a pretty bad start in the first half, but then he settled in and had a great second half because he was terrible on that screenplay that Jalen Carter blew up. All you had to do was just stay in front of Jalen Carter. I can't remember who it was. It may have been Brian Robinson. He probably goes for like 40, but he only ended up going for like 7 because of Chris Paul. And then he also had the false start that forced Joey Sly to end up not only making a 56-yarder, but having to make a 61-yarder immediately afterwards. And he hit it. Career long from my boy. He made all 4 of his extra points and made a 61-yarder. That's a boy right there. His career long previously was 58. He beat that with a 61-yarder by 3 yards today. Shouts out to him. Now, before we get up out of here, let's talk about this buy or sell thing. Shouts out to Grant Paulson for this stat. The Commanders fall to 3-5 this season. They blew a 14-3 lead and a fourth quarter lead. They gained 472 yards and scored 31 points and still lost. They are 25, 32, and 1 under Ron Rivera. And to remind you, the trade deadline is Tuesday. Now, as of right now, for an update, we have the 11th pick in the draft. We're tied with all the way up to the Indianapolis Colts, who have the eighth pick with a 3-5 record. But we have the toughest strength of schedule right now. So that's why instead of having the 8th, 9th, or 10th pick, we have the 11th pick. And then you also still have the Raiders and the Texans or whatever. All of those guys had bye weeks. Oh, no, never mind. I just refreshed. Now we have the 10th pick. So whatever just happened. The Chargers want something just changed, so scratch that. We have the 10th pick right now, but again, we're 3-5 with the 7th through 10th, so same range, same 4 picks. Instead of having the 7th, 8th, or 9th pick, which are teams that we're tied with, the Colts, Broncos, and Rams, we have the toughest strength of schedule, so that's why we have the 10th pick. But right now, the Commanders have the 10th pick in the draft. Are we just about to embrace the tank and just go ahead and work towards a higher draft pick? Or are we about to try to make the playoffs fall flat on our face and end up with a terrible draft pick and not get a truly impactful player? Is it time to just go ahead and embrace the tank? Shouts out my boy Tan Top Podcast again for this. It's seeming likely that an entirely new front office and coaching staff will have to decide between building around Howell or attempting to trade up for QB 1 or 2, Caleb Williams, Drake May, or drafting QB 3 or 4 later in the first round, maybe, Michael Penix, JJ McCarthy, or even Bo Nix, maybe potentially. We'll see. I personally feel like we could build around Sam Howell, and whatever high draft pick we have, if we end up with a super high one where we're in range of getting one of those top quarterbacks, trade back very slightly, get more draft capital, and take a top tackle in this draft. Matter of fact, first 2 rounds, take offensive line. Maybe the first 3 rounds, take offensive line. It's that bad, dog. Go straight offensive line. So regardless, but at the end of the day, it's up to the next front office, next coaching staff, because I'm pretty sure we're moving on. I'm pretty sure we are. Shouts out my boy Red Zone in the lab. My boy Deuce always bringing up great stats. Follow him on Twitter and everything. He says Sam Howell has played in 9 games. The ups are far greater than the downs. What he hasn't shown me takes longer than 9 games to develop. Every other young quarterback gets time he deserves it to. I completely agree. I think we build around Sam Howell. Again, even if we end up with one of those top 3 draft picks, you trade back slightly, still into the top 10 and get one of those elite tackles. Olu Fashanu, Joe Alt, my boy Marcus Mims, whatever. Also, to let you know, trade deadline wise, William Jackson III was the last Commanders player dealt at the trade deadline, and he was sent for an conditional 6th and 7th rounder. Not good, but that may not be a good reference, though. I think at the very least, Montez Sweat, Chase Young, or anybody we feel like Dylan is going to give us at the very minimum a 3rd rounder. Even if you want to trade Kendall Fuller, he'll go for more than what William Jackson went for at the very least. And we already saw the Falcons was confirmed to offer a 3rd for Montez Sweat. You do it for a 2nd round, no worse. I think we should hold out for a 1st, but then again, we're so desperate we may do it for a 2nd, because at the very worst, if you let Montez Sweat or Chase Young walk, both of those guys, at worst, you're going to get a 3rd round compensatory pick, so don't trade them for a 3rd round pick. Don't do that. Also, Jay Glazer mentioned on Fox NFL Sunday, rumors of the Bears trying to deal for Chase Young are not true. That's interesting. He also reported that Washington has received a lot of calls for Montez Sweat, Chase Young, and Jonathan Allen. He expects at least one of the 3 defensive linemen to get traded this week. As for what it could take to acquire Young, Glazer says it will likely be 2+ or 3+ because of the injuries he's dealt with. So if it weren't for the injury history, Chase Young would probably go for a 1st round pick easily. I mean, again, Brian Burns went for like a 1st and a 3rd, or like multiple for something crazy. Chase Young should be getting that if it weren't for the injury history, because again, so far this season, Chase Young has been a top 10 edge rusher up until this game against the Eagles. Easily. Arguably top 5 if you're looking at advanced stats. But yeah, man, both Chase Young and Montez Sweat said they can't control the rumors, and Young, when asked if he liked being here, he said for sure, I love Washington. And that makes sense. He's a DMV guy, but Montez Sweat is interesting because he's from Atlanta, which is another reason why I root for him so hard. He's from Atlanta, man. He may just... The Falcons already, I mean, it's like a match made in heaven. The Falcons wanted to offer a 3rd for him. Maybe they move it up to a 2nd, and then he gets to go back home, and the Falcons get a really good edge rusher, I believe, that still has the potential to be a good edge rusher. That could work out. Also, shouts out my boy Josh Taylor for bringing this up. I'm not going to completely read the tweet, but basically he's saying that, I mean, if you want to keep Chase Young and Montez Sweat, we have about $95 million worth of cap space. So my point is that you could technically pay him if you want to, but Josh Taylor's bringing up the point that if you want to keep both of them, that's probably going to cost you somewhere between 40 to 50, 45 mil for both of them each season. So that's like, so basically go ahead and subtract that. We have $45 million worth of cap space. Now you got Kendall Fuller, Curtis Samuel, Cameron Curl, Antonio Gibson, a lot of guys to pay. Also, a great point that Josh, my boy Josh Taylor is bringing up. Make sure you follow him on Twitter and all of that as well. And he has a YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe to him. The new GM in front office, coaching, all of that type of stuff will probably want to be aggressive in free agency. Josh Harris may want to go ahead and like turn this team around immediately, embrace the rebuild, get a bunch of draft picks, but then when free agency comes around, also before the draft, you go ahead and dive in. And so what new GM, new head coach and all of that will want to start with limited cap space. So we'll see how this goes. Maybe Ron Rivera is fired so soon and we already have the next head coach in the place to where it makes the decision easier and they can go ahead and decide new GM, new head coach before Tuesday in a couple of days, Halloween. Well, technically tomorrow because it's 12:13 a.m. Monday while I'm still recording this because this recording is going so long. Boy, I'm struggling. I'm starving. But yeah, man. We'll see how they end up handling this. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. I'm so tired. But yeah, again, is this Montez Sweat's last game as a Commander? That's really interesting. Also, shouts out my boy Tan Top Podcast. Brought up another good point. Josh Harris wouldn't be making a knee-jerk reaction if he fired Ron Rivera right now. He wouldn't. Especially if they lose next week. But sadly, next week is after the trade deadline, and you would probably prefer to go ahead and have a new head coach or GM or something, at least an interim guy like Eric Bieniemy as head coach in place before the trade deadline. But if we lose next week against the Patriots, it's time to go. So why not have the foresight to just go ahead and fire everybody now? We'll see. And it's not year 1, it's not year 2, it's not year 3, it's year 4, and they're 1-5 of the last 6 games while looking really bad a lot of these games, especially against the Bears and the Giants. Let the reconstruction of football operations begin now. Great point, man. Also, again, with the way that the Eagles fans are showing up to Commanders games, man, new GM, new organization, everybody, Josh Harris included, they're going to have to flip this not having a home field advantage in 2024. We got to start next season. Need to build a strong product. Shouts out to John Kahn for this. Also, aggressive offseason selling more season tickets. Need to provide more hope for the team. I agree. Also, shouts out my boy at We Won Dallas. He said, let's set something straight. If the Commanders sell in the coming days, Ron may still nominally be head coach, but it would mean he's effectively been stripped of all power and basically is just a lame duck, just placement face for the team. And that Harris is basically taking over, calling the shots. So even basically, I'm pointing that out. I brought that tweet up to say, even if Ron Rivera isn't fired before Tuesday, just assume that even though he's still here, he's not technically the head coach of the future. He's probably already no longer the head coach. But if we want to fire Ron Rivera, you could possibly move Eric Bieniemy from offensive coordinator to head coach. And then maybe move Ken Zampese, who's our senior offensive advisor, ex-quarterbacks coach last year, to maybe offensive coordinator. If you want to fire Jack Del Rio, maybe you move Steve Russ, the linebackers coach, to defensive coordinator, and then Ryan Kerrigan, the assistant D-lines coach, maybe moves to the linebackers coach maybe. I don't know. There's a lot of ways you can do this. Shouts out to Chad Ryan for some of those scenarios. Also, shouts out to Chris Cooley for this meme right here, because Timo Risk brings up a good point. With Kirk Cousins done for the season, Stafford potentially injured as well for the Rams, there's legit no NFC candidate for the 7th seed. Technically, statistically, and with Kirk done for season and the Rams looking done probably with behind Matthew Stafford getting hurt, and I don't even know what's going on with my Georgia Bulldogs. That's a minute. Both my Georgia Bulldogs are not working out too well for the Rams so far. We'll see what happens in the future. Technically, the 7th seed is wide open. So is Ron Rivera looking at the stats, like the numbers, like, hey, man, we could probably still make a run. He's probably in Josh Harris's front office right now, like, hey, man, give me a chance. Give me another chance, because we can still technically get the 7th seed. But my point is, even if we do end up with the 7th seed, what we going to do with it? What we going to do with it? We just going to have another worst draft pick just to accidentally stumble into the playoffs and get whooped like we did against the Buccaneers with Heineke a couple of years ago? There's no point. If we're not going to make any noise in the playoffs, don't even make them. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, dog. Also, interestingly enough, just to go ahead and point this out, by the time we play the Patriots, today's Monday, trade deadline Tuesday, we play the Patriots on Sunday. By the time we play them, we may have less team, less coaches, less players, but more draft picks. Be on the lookout for that. Also, shouts out to Al Galdi for this. I completely agree. Sam Howell was great, and yet the Commanders still lost. They need to sell and sell hard. accumulate draft capital. That, along with a large amount of cap space for next year, can set them up for the next regime with plenty of ammunition to go crazy. Admit what you are, accept it, and let the process begin. I agree. I told y'all perpetual middle is the worst you can be. Either be great or be sorry, but being average forever is the worst state that you can be in at the NFL level. The worst you can do, I'm telling you. Also, before we get up out of here, shouts out Magic Johnson for officially becoming a millionaire. He becomes the 4th athlete to become a billionaire. My fault, a billionaire, not a million. A billionaire, according to Forbes, joining Tiger Woods, MJ, and LeBron. Again, the 4th athlete of all time to ever become a billionaire, and he's one of our owners of our team, and I'm pretty sure he's celebrating the fact that he's a billionaire, but I'm also pretty sure he's highly upset with what he's seeing from the Commanders, and changes are on the way, because that boy has been tweeting up a storm about how the Commanders need to play better, how coaches need to be better, and all of that. It's time for some changes. So shouts out to Magic Johnson for becoming the 4th billionaire ever. As far as athletes go, I love it too. All black, man, I love it too. But yeah, man, and also with him being in ownership, that's wonderful as well. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button. Please get in the comment section, let me know you follow everything discussed in this video. Do you agree or disagree with any of my points? Again, like I said, this is a live reaction to the game. I took a break, but I still got to take some time to watch the all 22. A lot of this is me like inferring. I'm kind of guessing things up in the air. I'm saying I believe, I think. I'm not saying anything definitive, but still, let me know how you feel about everything I said in this video. Of course, if you want to support the channel, donate to $RicoScores, that's the Cash App, or WilliamAC94@gmail.com, that's the PayPal. The information for any way you want to donate to the channel, support the channel, is in the description of this video, the description of every video, every live stream, everywhere, every time. I appreciate y'all, man. Again, YouTube is tripping, so if you want to support the channel, the only way I can get anything for these videos is if y'all donate. So I really appreciate y'all if y'all feeling in your heart. Again, leave a like on the way out. I'm gonna catch y'all later. I'm out.